Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It is your Capes Crusader, Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our brand new friend, Jeff Martin of Hockeypocalypse Slashers. Welcome to the stream, and how are you doing tonight, Jeff?
I'm doing great, Cody. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about Hockey Mutants for the next half hour.
It was such a good read. I had the opportunity to read it. There's so much in it. I think over 115 pages, correct?
Yeah, I think it ends up being I think it's like 120 counting the covers. So yeah,
I had the opportunity. I read about 75. So I read about 3/4 of it. Got a good feel of how it's going, and holy crap, I loved it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to get a little sneak peek at it. One of my favorite things was the thing you added at the bottom. What was it called? It was like
the ticker.
The ticker. That was such a cool thing. I don't think I've ever seen that done before in a comic.
So that came about when I was putting together the first Hockeypocalypse book, because when I had designed sort of the pages, I'd essentially just done the math wrong on the ratio that I wanted to print. So I had extra space at the top and bottom. So I decided that I didn't really like how that looked, but if I moved everything up to the top so that all the space was in the bottom, it was enough room that I could fit text down there.
That is so smart.
I decided to take the scroll across the bottom that you always see if you're actually watching a hockey game. They'll have that scroll on the bottom of, out of town scores, news items, all that kind of stuff, and just incorporate that kind of thing, except it's all jokes.
I loved it. There was a moment in particular where someone did a squid joke, and at the bottom it's like, we don't have tomatoes anymore, so we use hockey pucks instead. Like, it just adds this extra layer of humor that I didn't even think was possible. I've never seen it before, and I love it even more that it was something where there was like a mess up and you kind of like made it like on the fly. That is such a unique way to go about it. So was it just hockey games that inspired you to do that?
The ticker specifically, yeah, it was just the idea of, like when you're watching TSN or Sportsnet or whatever, or however America watches sports now, when you're watching those, like they have that stuff scrolling along the bottom. And when I realized like, oh, that's where I have a ton of space, that it seemed like a perfect fit. And it also kind of, like I've been doing webcomics already for probably 3 or 4 years by the time I started on Hockeypocalypse. And so I'd already gotten used to writing stuff underneath the comic anyway, because that was how stuff was formatted on my site. Was there'd be the new comic and then there'd be a little news post underneath. So I was kind of already used to writing like a little joke to go along with it anyway, and so I kind of just combined what I was doing with webcomics with the Sportsnet ticker, and it's ended up being something that pretty much every book in the series ends up getting positive feedback specifically about the ticker.
I love it. So we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. I want to talk about this universe. I want to talk about that all first, but let's begin with you first. It's just that ticker was so good. I had to bring it up right away. So what got you into creating comics? Where was your first start? You're not only the writer, but you're also the artist too. So you're handling both positions. I mean, what led you into creating comics, at the very start?
It's something that I'd always been interested in. Like even in elementary school, my friends and I would like make comics and trade them with each other. But I started doing it as something that more than like 3 or 4 people would read when I was in university, because I wanted to do something that would get me a little bit more involved other than just going to classes. So I signed on with the newspaper to produce a comic strip once a week that ended up being a strip called Rent-A-Thug that ran for 5 years. And actually has just been revived for the Webtoon Call to Action contest.
That is so cool. So
for my entry in that contest.
What was Rent-A-Thug about? I mean, like, was it challenging coming up with a strip each week? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, it's definitely a much different style of writing than for, like a normal kind of here's several pages in a row kind of book style comic. In that you have a really small amount of space, and you have to, like, especially in that case, like, you don't really have a ton of room to develop characters or write dialogue. You kind of just need to figure out, like, what is the core of this joke, and then what information does the reader need to make that land, and then that's kind of all you've got room for.
That just seems impossible almost.
It's definitely I think it's a more difficult style of writing than because, like, writing a graphic novel is a lot of effort and, like, a fairly large task, but it still feels a bit more straightforward because you have room to do stuff. Like, there's room to have characters develop and interact with each other, and even maybe, like, include scenes that aren't necessarily, like, really advancing the narrative, but are giving you more grounding in the world or making the characters feel more alive.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with the strip, it's like, I think they were 2 inches tall and 10 inches wide. So, like, that's not a lot of space.
It seems like in real estate, you just had to make everything, use it as much as possible. There really wasn't room to kind of play around with having that much.
Yeah, so what I would end up doing is each week would be, I kind of framed it as if this is the kind of handbook you're given when you sign on with the Rent-A-Thug organization, which is like essentially like a criminal temp agency.
Mm-hmm.
And so each week would be a different, rule for criminal success. And then usually the illustration would be some sort of terrible failure that you're meant to learn from.
Can you give us an example from one of the weeks?
So the very first one was that you shouldn't keep your gun in your pants. And it was, a guy goes to pull his gun on somebody and accidentally shoots himself in the balls.
So this newspaper let you get away with a certain level of humor, it seems like, too.
I was always surprised that the only time there were ever complaints was only when other comics would tackle, like, actual on-campus stuff. Then people would complain about it. Like, if you make fun of a frat or you make fun of, a particular faculty or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, like, then you'll get complaint letters from, like, annoyed engineering students or something.
But then they don't care if it's anything else.
But I had 5 years of the punchline being, like, escalating amounts of cartoon violence and never once got a complaint.
No, I love the concept of it too. It seems like that would give you a lot of room to play with. Especially considering that you had 5 years of it. Did you ever feel like, you were burning out from it at all? 5 years is a pretty considerable run.
Well, so what I would do was I would do them in chunks, where I would do probably like a semester's worth over the course of a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of take time off and, like, draw other stuff, or just take some time off from drawing and recharge and, watch more movies, read more books, that kind of stuff, and then come back to it. And I think having those, building in those breaks for myself, so I wasn't doing one every single week and having that pressure of, like, okay, I have to get it done by this point so
Mm-hmm.
that the paper can go out on Thursday. I think that made it a lot easier to keep up the run for 5 years than it would have if I was going week to week, because I could just oh, I have an idea now, I'll just draw it. And then I would just bank a bunch and then walk into my editor's office with like a folder of like, all right, here's the next 3 months. All right, see you in 3 months.
I mean, so that experience, that had to have been truly like just remarkable for you. Like, how did it lead you into Hockeypocalypse? Like, where did we see you in between that time?
So Hockeypocalypse, I did a version of it starting in 2009, where I'd started writing it. And it ended up, what I wrote then ended up turning into the first book in the series after like a few layers of rewrites. But the series, sort of as people know it now, didn't come out until 2013. Because in the interim space, I had pitched the series to a bunch of places, gotten close to getting it picked up a few times, and then when I finished school, I kind of fell ass backwards into a publishing deal with a local company called Renegade Arts in Alberta. And so I was doing a weekly webcomic for them. And then we signed sort of the book deal to then publish that as a collection. But what led back to Hockeypocalypse was that I had finished all of the assigned pages for the collection, with like months left on the contract, like way ahead of when they were due. Because I had gotten, right out of school, I had gotten a position as artist in residence at a local comic shop. And so I was getting paid 2 days a week to sit in the store and draw.
Really?
And so
what did you draw there? Like just
I worked on the book.
Well, I mean, so the comic shop hired you to work on your book there?
Yeah, and it was
That's
a way
awesome.
to show customers this is what the books you're buying, this is how they're getting paid.
Dude, that is so cool. That man, that had to have just been no, you probably got 5 books done working there. Oh my god, that is awesome opportunity.
Because I finished the book I did was about the War of 1812 that was published, and I because of the artist in residence job, I got that done way in advance of when it was due. But that meant I was still getting checks from that, but also I needed something to do during these artist in residence shifts. So I brought out the original Hockeypocalypse script and started rewriting it, and that turned into I made a mini comic of the first issue, and then I took it to a local convention, and I think I only printed 20, 25, something like that. But then at the local show, I sold those all in 2 days.
Wow, that's awesome.
Oh, I guess this is a thing that people are interested in. Okay, I'll finish out the rest of the book. And then by the time I had finished the book and put out a trade, I'd sold a couple hundred of the single issues, and so then that just propelled sort of the rest of the series.
No, that is I love that so much. So did that comic store also start selling these books on the shelves too?
Yeah, and they've been one of 2 stores that have been responsible for probably 95% of my book sales through stores.
That is so awesome. Yeah, that is so cool. I'm just still mind blown. I've never heard of that. An artist in residence. That is so cool that they hired you to do that, and just the opportunity that it presented. How many books did you end up coming out with the Hockeypocalypse until we meet Hockeypocalypse slashers? How many books are there in between?
So there are 4 graphic novels that are split into 13 issues.
Wow. So can you give us like a little bit of a recap, I guess, of like where we're at with Hockeypocalypse, like, you know, like kind of maybe like where, like how it starts and a little bit leading up to Slashers, kind of like, I guess, a very rough idea of the story.
Yeah, so the kind of the core premise is that the world has ended. There's been this apocalypse, and the survivors that are left over have been mutated. And so in Canada, these kind of tribes of mutants decide that the best way to battle for resources, instead of just stealing from each other, is, what do we know? Hockey. All right, perfect. We're all going to have we'll recruit our own hockey team, and we will play against other teams and gamble resources on our team winning. And they kind of just develop their whole society around that.
No, I love it. I love it.
The first few books we're kind of establishing like who the Edmonton Atomics are. They are our protagonist team. I am from Edmonton, so they were sort of the natural hometown team. There's a lot of kind of specific local color involved, particularly like the first panel of the first book is a big panoramic shot of what our downtown looks like, looking across the river valley.
That's so cool. Did you play hockey for him too?
Sorry?
Did you play hockey too?
Not well. But yeah,
you're not the spoon, huh?
No, I absolutely was not. I was about as good as a spoon.
Were you the goalie?
No,
okay.
God no.
I was gonna ask. I remember when I was reading this, there was two parts. When the goalie, like the puck went through the arm, and I thought maybe that was a symbolism for something, because it just, like, the way it was repeated, it seemed like there was a reasoning for it.
Oh yeah, it's definitely it's the, sort of in hockey terms, it's the kind of like the save you have to make, right? Like if you can get it like squeezed between your body like that, like there's no reason that you shouldn't make that save. And so it's kind of it serves as kind of a metaphor for, Stretch's lack of focus, because he's gotten what he wants. Everything is hockey, but now it's normal. And that just kind of sort of screws up his entire like sense of who he is and what he wants, because he's got what he wants, and now like, but now I have what I want, but it's almost like boring now. Yeah,
and that's the thing that we see in a lot of different mediums too. Like, poor people, when they become too rich, then all of a sudden their lives are boring because they have everything they want. It's kind of like an insane like concept to think about, right? Like, loving hockey and ultimately being a part of a hockey team that gets resources for your town, and then like not finding like purpose within that. It was a really interesting topic to tackle in there, I thought.
Well, and what that came from was the idea that I've been thinking about, which was that I've sort of achieved what I wanted. Like when I set out to do comics, is that I want that to be the thing that I do, right? I don't want to go to work and then come back and try and fit in comics at night. I want to draw comics full time. That's what I want to do. But then once I got to that, it didn't feel like it was enough to just be doing comics. I had to be doing, I had to be getting bigger deals and better distribution, and then those things, but to do what I want. And so it got me thinking about, once you get what you want, at what point does that stop being enough and you want something more than that? And that's kind of where Stretch's story came from, because I think it like at every point for an artist, like everyone at some point will get to a stage where they kind of forget that, like, oh right, this is really fun, and that's why I was doing it in the first place. But because we do it under capitalism, there's all these other concerns that you have to attach to it, like, you know, oh, I want to work on book X. Does anyone want that? Will I make any money off of that? Would I have a better chance of landing that with a publisher or a literary agent if I did book Y instead? And it can be really easy to just kind of get wrapped up in all of the stuff around making the art that sucks, and not remember that, like, yeah, at the end of the day though, like, when I get out of bed and go to work, it's to draw cartoon pictures, which is pretty cool.
No, it is. It's really awesome. I wish I could draw, and the best you'll get out of me is like a stick person. Like, I was reading this. I love the style so much. The style was just remarkable. What was some of your influences for it?
I'd say, like, influence-wise, when I was starting out, I really wanted to ink like Mike Mignola, and was very bad at it. But that essentially was like what started me wanting to ink. And then over time, it's just been kind of amalgamating like influences from all over the place. Like, a lot of the action is really influenced by trying to meld the manga techniques that are so good at conveying energy and motion with sort of like sports photography. And then in general, this book uses a lot more filled in black than some of the previous books in the series, because this is the most kind of overtly a horror story book in the series. So I wanted to kind of add a little bit of that visually, as well as in the context of the story. But yeah, it's I always struggle to come up with like lists of influences, because there's so many, and I will always so many.
One of those things, like a couple days later.
Since lately, and the degree to which that has influenced the way I write has definitely become more apparent as I rewatch it. Because I've really kind of taken the core principle of, especially like the early like highly regarded Simpsons, where everything needs to come from these characters trying to accomplish something, and balancing wanting to do weird stuff with always keeping in mind that the heart is what makes it work.
Oh yeah, I remember. Do you remember the very first Simpson animations? Like, oh man, they looked way different. Like the very first couple episodes compared.
Yeah.
Like, especially before Maggie was involved in everything. Like when it was just Bart, and I think maybe Lisa.
Yeah, those were real janky.
Yeah, but the Simpsons, it was so good though. It was. I think it's because of the way the stories were conceived, the way it came from the characters. I think that's really sold them. So speaking of that, like, what's your creative process look like when you're coming up with the stories and you're scripting them, paneling them, and designing them? What does that process look like for you as the writer and the artist?
So on this book specifically, it started with talking. This one was co-created with Lukasz Kowalczyk. And that came about because I did a section of pinups in the previous book, Cult of Hockey, and I got him to draw one of them. And it was this really like cool, weird, like B-movie poster style drawing called The Revenge of the Mega Potato. And that was such a cool, like, weird idea that we
Is that where the Mega Potato came from?
The Mega Potato came from the third book.
Okay. All right.
But it was such a, like, weird element of the series that had been introduced that, like, that's because when I gave the artists the briefing for doing the pinups, it was kind of just like, here's the PDFs of the 3 previous books, just, like, kind of do whatever. And so, yeah, he just kind of came up with this, like, image that tells a story of the Mega Potato getting its revenge for being used as a battery and, like, zapping all of the players. And it was just such a, like, cool image that had its own story that we started talking about. Like, what if we use this as the basis for a story, and we do one where we work together on it? And we spent probably, like, 6 months, maybe more, of just emailing back and forth every once in a while with, like, hey, what if we also included this? What if we did this? And then eventually we had like, enough ideas that we could make something out of it. And the original plan was that we were going to do a one shot that I would write and he would draw. And then when I actually started writing the script, I got to the point where, okay, I need to figure out what this story is actually about, because we have a bunch of cool stuff that will happen, but I need that connective tissue needs to be there, and it has to have that heart that will make the reader want to carry through with this beyond just seeing what the next weird thing that happens will be. And that's when I came up with the stretch story. But when I started writing that, it just kept getting bigger. And because this is my own series and I can do what I want, that instead of being a problem and having to really cut it down, that just became, okay, this is the next book. Like, this isn't a one shot anymore. This is the next book. Which changed some of the kind of project calculus a little bit, because at that point, that was much more than Lukasz could commit to drawing. So what we did was I wrote the entire script and then went back through it, and we picked out, I think we ended up with 15 pages that he was going to draw. And so we kind of incorporated, he designed the slashers. The titular slashers, who are the antagonist team. He designed them, and he draws all of their appearances through the first half of the book, and essentially up until the game against them starts. He draws all of their appearances, and then through the remainder of the book, he draws essentially all of the weirdest stuff.
So I didn't even get to the best part, it sounds like. I got right to the game, and you're saying there's some weird stuff that goes on after that?
Oh, yeah. Like, once you're in, like, the sort of the back probably 30 pages, like the last 30 pages or so of the story, gets real weird and really chaotic, and was some of the most fun I've had drawing a comic in a long time.
That's so awesome. I love seeing the hockey game between the two. The slashers, they live up to their names. They play really dirty, and I just loved, like, the action scenes between them. Was it hard drawing hockey? I like, it seems like this was a sport that you really like. Is it hard to draw that, though?
Yes, but not nearly as much as it used to be. At this point, now that this book is done, I've drawn about 500 pages of the series. And
That's
so
a lot.
Now, a lot of stuff that used to require like pretty heavy referencing, I can just do. Like, skating, I no longer have to think about skating and how to draw it, because that's the thing that is the hardest to do in a hockey comic, is convey that it's not the way skating works isn't like running, but you're on ice. It's very much a pretty specific, different kind of movement.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to tell if the artist is just kind of copying it from photos, or if they didn't do the homework to figure out what skating should look like. And so that's where like a lot of the most difficult parts of drawing come in, is just how do I design action set pieces around the way they have to move while they're skating, and how do I make that look good? And then goalies are a nightmare.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, because they then add another layer of they don't move like anyone else. Like they move uniquely compared to everyone else because they're constantly up and down.
Mm-hmm.
They're going side to side a lot in a way that is like looks really unnatural. And so then that is like the extra layer of difficulty.
I was gonna say, I thought you really killed it with the ice, like the way the skates would go, like your attention to detail, like when the blades would hit, like, and the ice would like come off. What do you call that? The shards of ice, like when you skate and you hit the
it's just I don't know, like
the
snow,
cloud of ice. Yeah.
But yeah, and thank you, because that was something that was important to me starting out the series, was that it's really easy to make the players look like they're floating, and I wanted everything to feel like it had weight.
Yeah.
And because in my opinion, when you're doing action, when it feels like it has weight, it feels more like it's easier to buy into it to me if it feels like it has weight, and collisions have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
The way people are moving matters. And that was, I had done a wrestling webcomic for several years before the first Hockeypocalypse book, and one thing that constantly got mentioned in reviews and talking to readers was people really liked how it felt like the characters were heavy in a way that made it feel more realistic, even though it was a comic about space wrestlers.
That is awesome, dude. You have I love it. Hockeypocalypse, space wrestling. Are you doing any other things after this, like sports wise?
I mean, I would love to. Like, if I could probably fill like the entire rest of my career with nothing but sports comics that I have ideas for right now.
That is so awesome. Why sports though? Like, out of everything you could be touching on, like, what's drawing you to sports?
I think part of it is that there is built-in conflict and conflict resolution that doesn't require any like artifice to get to. Like you don't have to really set up why these people are going to like resolve their conflict in this way. It's just, no, this is like the source of and solution to all of the conflict. And I think a lot of it comes too from, like I've watched sports since I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain kind of perfect synthesis of like depth that you can be a real nerd about.
Yeah.
But also like primitive lizard brain violence.
Oh yeah. And that leads me to my next question. Like, hockey and wrestling are both like, kind of combative sports. What would be the next one you would do if you could?
I I really like the idea of doing a football or like kind of football adjacent sports comic about either set in like a far sci-fi or like fantasy setting.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I think that'd be really fun. I've got a bunch of different ideas for basketball comics. I could probably do like 4 or 5 other completely distinct hockey series if I was if some maniac gave me the budget to do that. I actually pitched a cartoon series at one point that was a completely different hockey story.
No, that is awesome. I love it. I love it. So real quick, let's go ahead. Let's pull up the Zoop campaign. We got this posted in chat for everyone that is watching. Feel free to check this out with us. It's over on Zoop. If you're unable to back, you can share it on your social media platforms because you might have a friend who might be into this, and it is such an awesome read. Once again, Jeff, thank you so much for giving me an advanced preview to take a look at.
Yeah, so, no problem. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Hockeypocalypse slashers. Mighty Ducks meet Goosebumps with a dash of Mad Max in an all-ages post-apocalyptic hockey horror. So currently at 1,875 of 1,800. So you just funded. Congratulations on that. When did you hit that?
That was over the weekend.
Yeah, let's go, dude. Congratulations on that. So 52 supporters with 2 days left. Let's go over the story first, and then we'll kind of go through the tiers and the add-on. So is this a little trailer we could watch?
Yeah, there's a trailer there. I will give most of the credit to that to my wife because I hate the process of making the video for crowdfunding.
Yeah.
But there's like statistical evidence that having a video improves your campaign. So I always come up with like, what is the least effort I can put into the video and have it be passable? And then she'll be like, yeah, but like, why don't you just make it good instead? but I don't want to. I don't have time for that. And then she'll go into her office for like 2 hours and like, oh, that is good.
So next campaign, you're like, all right, I just need to even go less bare minimum, make it even more crappier, and I'm gonna get something good out of it. I'm on to you, Jeff.
So, yeah, so like the only thing I contributed here was the voiceover and giving her all the image files.
All right, so we'll watch this. Just to give you a heads up, you probably won't be able to hear it on your end, but we'll be able to hear it loud and clear on ours, and it'll also bleed into your audio channel. So if you try to talk, we won't be able to hear you.
Okay.
Do you think hockey games would be significantly improved with radioactive mutants? Have you watched more straight-to-VHS low-budget horror movies than is probably good for your brain? Then you need my new graphic novel, Hockeypocalypse Slashers! The Mighty Ducks meets Goosebumps in this all-ages horror story, as the Edmonton Atomics find themselves facing a gang of deranged mutants calling themselves the Cold Lake Slashers. Will Atomics goalie Stretch rediscover the will to keep fighting and stop those pucks? Or will the people of Edmonton become the Slashers' next victims? Hockeypocalypse Slashers! Get it before it gets you!
That was good. I like that end too. Get it before it gets you.
Yeah, I enjoy whenever I have the opportunity to kind of do a monster truck announcer voice.
Dude, me too. Like I do it all the time just out of like just to be like funny about it, and my girl is always not saying it's funny at all, but it's always nice when you get the opportunity and you nailed it. I loved it. That was awesome too. The voice acting was really good. Was that music from you guys too, or did you find that online?
No, the voice acting I did that.
No, the music.
Oh, the music was yeah, that was a royalty-free track that she found online that I cannot remember the title of, but was like kind of perfect.
No, I think it went well. So in post-apocalyptic Canada, guns don't kill people, slap shots do. This is a standalone horror graphic novel That is 116 pages, black and white, available both in trade paperback and hardcover, and is the most action-packed, beautifully rendered, bonkers book Jeff has ever made. So this is for fans of hockey stories like Check Please, Slapshot, Planet Hockey, horror comedies like Army of Darkness, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And then here are some of the preview pages as well. So yeah, I love this. I thought the art was just phenomenal. The writing was good too. Everything was just like the pacing of it. Like I've never really read a whole lot of sports comics, so like I wasn't sure like how the pacing would feel, but like the pacing was just phenomenal too.
Thank you. Most of the sports comics I've read are manga because they do a lot, and for whatever reason, despite the fact that sports in the United States makes like infinity money every year.
Yeah.
It really doesn't cross into the comic space at all, and that doesn't make sense to me. And so yeah, like a lot of the sort of like technique and craft stuff ends up coming from manga and then sort of adjusting it to telling the story faster, because it's not in the like the Shonen Jump chapter kind of presentation.
I just noticed the gleam in the hair was an S. I don't know how I didn't notice that off the rip when I first read it, but looking down, I'm like, this sneaky SOB. Look at him hiding this like that. Like that's like perfect. I love it. Another thing too, since because I didn't want to spoil anything, but since it's on the preview, we could talk about it. But I love how the goalie had freaking nunchucks. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, that was part of the design that Lukasz sent me. Was that his stick was nunchucks, and I thought that was hilarious. So I ended up building a bunch of sequences around that.
There was
because it was also something that was just completely unique. Like I'd never even considered that. So and like I always like trying to do something fun with the way the characters are mutated, but that like having the stick be nunchucks just gave me so many ideas for action bits to go around it. But
I love how this guy too it seems like he has a bunch of cliche like quotes. There was one in particular, it gave me, what was it, Face Off vibes, when he's like, it'll be mine, it will. No wait, that is Gone in 60 Seconds. I'm trying to remember what movie it was from.
He actually speaks and this was another thing that Lukasz insisted on, and I was just like, yeah, that's weird, I like it. Was that Nice Guy speaks entirely in action movie quotes. He's the only player on the slashers that talks. It's just him, and then we introduced the manager character because I realized I needed somebody to have that scene before the slashers are introduced. So they have a manager character as well. But yeah, Nice Guy is the only slashers player who speaks, and he speaks only in action movie quotes.
I love it. So right here are some of the bios, and then we'll go through the tiers. So Jeff is an award-winning cartoonist and definitely not a robot. Written and drawn graphic novels for clients including Simon and Schultzer. Did I say that right?
Simon and Schuster. At one point they were the biggest publisher in the world. I don't know if they are now.
Games Workshop, HeavyMetal.com, Heavy Metal Icons as like Gwar. Oh man, you worked for Gwar?
Yeah, I worked on 2 of their comics. I did a backup in issue 4 of their Orgasmageddon series.
That is so cool.
And then I got promoted to do a whole chapter in their next graphic novel, The Enormogantic Fail.
So were you a big Gwar fan but like previously before then, or?
Yeah, the comic that I did for HeavyMetal.com was named after a Gwar song called Where Is Zog? Because I had an opportunity to pitch to a music magazine. I was like, okay, well, I need a comic that is music related somehow, but I don't know that much. Like, I don't know how to make a comic that is just about like music itself. So I'm just gonna take a song and sort of build a comic around that. And then that ended up getting me the job doing the backup story.
Wow, that is so good. Did you have like any idea that would happen? Like that had to have blown your mind when Gore hit you up like, hey, what's up, Jeff?
Well, what ended up happening was they ran a Kickstarter for the first issue of Orgasmageddon before I think it was Dynamite picked it up to distribute it. And so they had in the Kickstarter there was a lot of mention of, you know, there were going to be a bunch of variant covers and backup stories by artists that weren't announced yet. So I just kind of took a shot, like, well, maybe they're not announced because they don't have them yet.
That is smart thinking. I would have never considered to think like that. I love it.
So I sent the writer Matt Miner was the one who managed the Kickstarter. So I sent him an email, just kind of being like, "Hey, this is this comic I'm doing over for heavy metal on their website, and it is Gwar influenced. And you know, if there's anything available, I'd love to do something." And he liked the comic, and I don't know, about a year later, I got another email from him saying, "Hey, are you available to do like a 2-page short for issue number 4?" And I was.
That's an opportunity you make sure you are, right? Like that's something like, oh man, that is so cool. That is awesome.
Especially for 2 pages, that's like an easy one to, like, even if I had been swamped at the time, 2 pages is short enough that, like, I'll make that work somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. So here is the other person involved on this. Do you want to go ahead and give him a shout out?
Yeah, Lukasz Kowalczyk is one of my favorite cartoonists. All of his stuff is he describes it as dumb comics for smart people, which I actually think is really fitting because it's very, all of his stuff is like, you will know from the high concept whether you will like it or not. And it's just like really, a lot of like really weird, over the top, like what if how you remember the 80s did a bunch of drugs?
I love it already.
Like,
yeah.
kind of how I think of the aesthetic that he draws with. And yeah, like he's done a ton of books. And like not all of them are available readily in English, or at least like physically in English. Like I think almost all of them are you can at least download them digitally.
Mm-hmm.
In English, because he does, you know, he's bilingual, or maybe more than that, I don't know. People in Europe actually learn other languages, unlike here where we have 2 official languages and I speak like barely one.
Yeah, I can't even really say anything. I'm from America. Like we expect everyone to speak American, so
I took 5 years of French, but then I live in the province where there's not that many places where you use French, so then I lost most of it.
Chocolat bleu. No, that's the only thing I know.
I kept being able to do the accent, but that was it.
You know, my grandma was from what is it? I always mispronounce it. Newfoundland?
Newfoundland?
Yeah, Newfoundland. Yeah, he's the smile. He's like, stupid American.
My wife and I have like an ongoing joke of just judging Americans who can't pronounce French words.
I know, I'm the worst.
Because especially like she has a French last name that's pretty common, and so we'll hear it said on podcasts in relation to other people. And the amount of pronunciations we have heard of an extremely simple name it's just comical how many times she's gotten to hear her name pronounced horribly wrong, and then just sort of made like the Marge Simpson. No,
No, that's like me. You know, I grew up as a kid. I had a lot of speech therapy, so pronunciations are definitely my weak point. When I seen your name, I was like, yes. Like I interviewed someone from Germany, and he had a co-creator, and their name had an O with 2 dots above it, and I'm like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? Like, I'm screwed. So when I seen you, I was like, dude, thank God, like an easy one. Let's go. No, that's awesome though. So let's take a look right here. Some of the stretch goals too. So once you hit 3,000, paper upgrade to 1, thicker, more robust paper. And then 5,000, you're going to get an upgrade for 2, so smoother, thicker paper with richer black printing. So I didn't even consider. I've never seen people do like paper upgrades for their stretch goals. This is really awesome. So if you hit the stretch goal, it just upgrades the quality of the book overall. I really like that. There's not really, you know, a lot of people do like the stickers or posters and stuff, and you just have those as add-ons, right?
Yeah, generally speaking, like I've tried doing, I've done prints. And unless you make them the same size as the book, they're a huge pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. Because they completely change your shipping math. And also then I have to like design them.
Yeah.
And I really like working on comics. I don't like working on prints that much. I don't find it super enjoyable. So instead I focused a lot of the extra stuff on either giving people like original drawings or drawing stuff directly in their book.
All right, so let's go. We'll take a look at some of the tiers as well. So you have the digital edition for $4, the Hockeypocalypse full series set digitally for $16. So this is over, you said 500 pages of comic, right?
Yeah, because each book is at least 100 pages long. They're all a bit variable. Longest is 124, I think. Mm-hmm. And the shortest is 110. But yeah, so you're getting over 500 pages for $16.
And then we get the trade paperback signed for $16. The early bird hardcover, so I'm assuming this is already done for, right? The early bird one?
No, they just never changed the text. That's just the regular hardcover price.
So $24 for a hardcover sign. So that's a really good price as well. I mean, that's what, $8 more?
Yep. Yeah.
Hey, you had me sweating there when you said, I was like, oh god, did I just look like an idiot?
Yeah, no, I was like, oh god, I didn't think I would do math today.
So early bird, the Hockeypocalypse full series, print and digital, $64, and then
that's also that is the normal price now. It has been converted from. They just didn't take off early bird.
And then you get the full Jeff Martin library for $140. So this has books outside of Hockeypocalypse.
Yeah, that is everything that I have worked on that is still in print. So that is all 5 Hockeypocalypse books. Kayfabe, a wrestling anthology, which I did a story in. WrestleMon, which was essentially I applied for an arts grant to do a different thing, and then realized those take a long time to decide whether you get them or not. So I decided to see if I could finish a book before I heard back from them. It turns out, yes, I could.
Did you end up getting the grant?
A wrestling and Pokemon mashup. About like battling monsters. The Guar book, the newer one, the Enormogantic Fail, the 2 War of 1812 books that I did for Renegade Arts, the 2 Hellink books.
So are those a different size of print? They look like they're like a different size.
Yeah, they are. They're horizontal books because they're comic strips, so they are in the same format as like the old like the Garfield.
Awesome, that's cool.
Kind of collections. And then I drew a book about Anne Frank, which was what I did at Simon & Schuster. And I have a bunch of those in my closet, so I threw that one in there too.
All right, and then there's a tip jar as well, so anyone that wants to add a little extra, you could definitely do that. Some of the add-ons. a sketch in your book, so an ink sketch added to the title page of your physical book by Jeff. And then you could join the team, a portrait of yourself as a hockey mutant, 6x9 ink and marker drawing of yourself. So yeah, this is everything in its entirety. Was there anything else on this campaign that we might be missing?
No, that's pretty much it. I'm looking forward to, in the sort of the last 2 days that are left here, four more backers matches the last Hockeypocalypse book that I did on Kickstarter.
Okay.
Cult of Hockey. So I'm hoping for at least 5 more, so I can beat that record.
They always say the first and the last days are the most active. Did you feel like on Zoop the first day kind of was like similar with Kickstarter? Or how was like the beginning of your Zoop campaign compared to Kickstarter?
I think it's followed pretty similar campaign trends so far, where the first 3 or 4 days are really busy, and then it kind of settles into where you're either getting, like 1 or 2 backers a day, or where you'll just go a couple days with nothing and then just like a handful at once. So that's pretty common for crowdfunding. Is generally the beginning you get a lot because those are the people who are like paying attention to your stuff online and are kind of aware that this is coming, and are ready to go. And then at the end, you get the people who have been seeing it and meant to get around to it, then realizing like, oh, I gotta do this. This is almost done. And then the middle is generally where you're getting the people who are finding out about it, over the course of the campaign, and like, this is new to them. That's generally who's coming along.
So with this being said, for anyone who's watching after going through the campaign but they're hesitant to back, what would you like to say to them directly to kind of help push them over that little bump?
I'd say that this is like I said in the campaign, like I think this is the best book I've ever created. I'm really happy with everything about it. I think the main hurdle that I seem to find with people is they're like, oh well, I don't like hockey, and that's not a thing that matters. Like all you really need to know is like puck goes in the net, that's a goal. Because it's really it's a story about like people and like the feelings of existing in this post-apocalyptic world where they've like kind of got what they wanted, of like, yeah, now I get to play essentially professional hockey. That was my dream. But also I got it in a way where if my team loses, my friends don't get to eat. So they get the kind of the worst, most high pressure version of the thing they wanted. And also just like a really good like horror story about a team of killer mutant maniacs. And so yeah, like don't worry about whether or not you like sports, because you don't need to. You don't really need to understand hockey. You just need to understand stories about people and punching.
No, I agree with you. I used to watch hockey, so when I read and read this, I was able to pick up on everything. But it's also one of those things where I feel like it's just using hockey as a means of like giving the story. It's like so much more than hockey, because you're fleshing out the characters. There's motive between their actions. There's a mutant potato. I mean, there's so much more than hockey. So I really think this is something where it's definitely just worth the pickup. Even at the digital price, you're getting 116 pages of comic for what it was $4, $6.
Yep. Yep. The digital for just this book is $4, or you can get all 5 of them for 16.
Yeah, and that's 500
so-
pages. So
Yeah, there's definitely I think some big value in the digital tier. And then yeah, actually I have where's the camera? I have the proofs of the book.
So yeah, it's all ready to go as soon as it funds. How long do you think it'll take for everything to print and get shipped?
Shouldn't be too long. The printing, I'd imagine the printing will be probably a little over a month between the actual printing and me getting the books. And then there'll be another few weeks of getting everything organized and shipped out. So the aim is to get people their books by October and the start of hockey season. But
That's like perfect.
certainly could be earlier than that, kind of depending on printing and shipping, and if those go smoothly, then it'll be sooner.
So before we wrap things up completely, what's next for Hockeypocalypse? Like after Slashers, where are you seeing this series go?
I don't know. I don't have a real strong plan for what is going to be next. I have a bunch of stuff that I want to do with the series in the future. But what comes next will kind of be based on like what catches my attention as like a cool idea that I want to build a story around.
Oh, I gotcha.
It's currently in a phase of the series building the world beyond sort of the region that the first few books take place in, and seeing more of like the rest of Canada and possibly some of the United States. And so, I have a bunch of ideas sort of around those themes, and it'll just be a case of like what captures my imagination and really gets me writing.
No, that's cool. No, absolutely. And real quick, my last question, possibly one of my favorite questions that I ask everybody that is on the show, because as much as this show is a nice platform for you to get on here and promote your book and your work, it's also a nice learning tool for anyone that might be watching that's new in the field. So with that in mind, for anyone who is starting out as a new creator and they're having struggle just getting their own story started, what type of advice would you give them to kind of help them just, overcome that barrier?
I think the best advice that no one wants to follow is start short. Don't worry about starting with like a multi-volume, multi-issue series. Start on stuff that isn't your like huge passion project. Start with 1 or 2 page short stories, and just post them online, get some traction. If doing like fan comics of like existing stuff that you're into is what kind of gets you going and started, do that. But just find what lets you kind of get going, and don't worry about whether it is like your magnum opus. Like, you just need to do stuff. Look for anthologies and see if even if you don't end up pitching to them, but like see if you can come up with a story that would suit their theme.
Yeah.
I find that's actually a really helpful exercise in just thinking about stuff that maybe you wouldn't normally. It'll make you really find what interests you as a creator, because you'll notice that you'll start turning the prompts into stuff that you want to make, as opposed to, oh, here's what I think they'll like. And so I think that's actually, it's a really valuable writing exercise to just be given a set of parameters and then have to make something that interests you within those.
Yeah, because it forces you to use parts of your brain that you probably typically wouldn't be using, right? To really stretch that imagination, to really fill that blank.
Yeah, and it's just you kind of want to expand your toolbox as much as possible, right? So like the more stuff you know how to do and are comfortable doing, the better. And so I think that's kind of like the best advice for getting started is just figure out what will motivate you to actually do something.
No, I think that is perfect. Thank you so much for that piece of advice. I love anytime we can get a piece of advice that's different, and really, it really strikes to the core. I think that's something that can be, applied really easily and something that you could start doing right away. So thank you for that, Jeff. That was awesome. Everyone watching, thank you so much for making it to this, point in the video. Jeff, what social media platforms would you like to shout out before we close up?
Big one is Twitter at HeatComic. That's the one that I am the most active on, and you can kind of get to everything from there. I also have a website. It is rentathugcomics.com. You can also get to pretty much everything from there. You can also read my weekly webcomic Hell Inc. On there. You can also read it on Webtoon. Just search for Hell Inc. in the Canvas section where they do their essentially like the people that they have not hired comics get put in the Canvas section. And then you can also read on Webtoon my Rent-A-Thug comic, which is the first one of those that has been published in I think like 12 years. And I'm really pleased with how that turned out because it was my first attempt at drawing in the Webtoon sort of vertical scroll format.
No, that is so cool. Everyone who's watching, be sure to check those out. We also have those listed in the comments below if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. For me, be sure to hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications if you're watching. This has been such an awesome talk. I really appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Tuesday night. Everyone watching, I hope you have a fantastic night, but most importantly, keep it geekly. I think that might be the best outro I've done yet, Jeff. I think